This episode of the TRM podcast is brought to you by TRM, trusted IT solutions for today's business challenges.
Hi, my name is Norman Carr. I'm the president of TRM Technologies, and today I have invited Scott Wright, practice lead for social engineering and security awareness. And I'd like to have a discussion today that hopefully will enlighten customers as to what exactly is social engineering, what is a social engineering threat, and how does it impact your organization. So Scott, can I hand it over to you, please?
Hi, Norman. Yeah, thanks very much. It's great to be chatting with you today, and I look forward to discussing the risks of social engineering and how people can address them.
Okay, so with that said, what is a social engineering threat and how does it impact various organizations?
Yeah, it's a great question. Social engineering sounds like a complicated term, but it's actually really comes down to doing scams or cons or hoaxes to try and trick people into doing things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And it's one of the most common methods used for attackers to gain unauthorized access to information and systems. It really involves researching targets that they might want to get access to. And after they get some research and knowledge about the situation, they can create what are called pretexts, which are believable situations. And then they can use those to approach people on email or SMS or phone or even in person. And the impacts of these things are getting pretty big. It can cost thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars. There's an example I can point to. Recently in Europe, there was a movie chain called Pathé that lost over 19 million euros in a series of scams. And it was portrayed as a strictly confidential acquisition initiative. And so the instructions going between organizations weren't properly authenticated, and the attackers were able to get one of the organizations to transfer this much money from their organization to the attacker.
That's a concern. I've seen the same thing even within our organization, where exactly the same sort of discussion: can you transfer money? Can you do US funds? And in fact, apparently the message had indicated that I was busy. And so one of my staff was scratching their heads knowing that they always need authorization to transfer funds. So
right.
They slid a note under my door, phone. So I was busy, but I shook my head and said no, and they didn't do it. So anyway.
Oh, good for you.
No worries. Why is it such a problem, though, for organizations and their people to follow procedures to negate just that kind of activity? Why is that proving to be a problem?
It's a great question, because I think a lot of people don't realize that they can be targeted, and attackers know by now that employees are really the weakest link. After decades of us spending millions of dollars on technology to secure networks and computers, we haven't spent virtually anything on securing what I call the human endpoints, right? The people. And with a bit of research, attackers realize it's easier to trick an employee into giving access because they might have let their guard down. They might not be following the strictest of procedures. And a lot of organizations know that this is a problem, and they're putting awareness programs in place, but those programs aren't really effective because they're using traditional learning management systems and they're not teaching defensive skills. Imagine if you wanted to learn martial arts, right? You can't really do that from a whiteboard session or a Zoom session, right? You've got to be out there and do it in person and practice. And this is something that really doesn't come in any security awareness training program that's delivered by a learning management system. And so without the engagement or interactivity for employees, they really lose attention really quickly and they remain vulnerable. And that means that they can be tricked and attacked pretty easily. And there are technologies like, biometrics, which can help a lot, but attackers even know how to craft attacks that can bypass those technologies. In fact, they test, their scenarios sometimes against the technologies just to make sure that it will work against certain technologies.
Does this mean that security technologies are not 100% effective? Is there no hope for managing risks from social engineering attacks? Are we screwed, or is this manageable?
Yeah, I think not at all. First of all, we need the technology there because any attacks that the technology can defend against, we have to have that technology in place. But really, the next generation of security awareness is fighting risks using gamified learning. And that includes social engineering as well as other kinds of different types of threats. What we really want to see is something that I would call cyber herd immunity, which really just means we're trying to get everybody on the team to be able to recognize an attack as early as possible and avoid it. We're all working to protect the organization. And the key to that is, as I said, we need to have engagement. We have to have the ability to practice, and we have to keep updating them on new content to keep that immunity alive. And then we have to get assurance that people actually have proficiency and are able to reduce the vulnerability of the organization. And that's exactly what the new technologies are doing, such as ClickArmor.
I've seen enough reports over the years. It continues to be the number one reason why organizations are breached. It's somebody from the organization, a member of staff, has released a user ID and password, either accidentally, innocently, or maliciously. And so after all these years of being in the security business, I continue to see it still the number one reason why somebody got in and took advantage of an organization. I want to ask, can ClickArmor be used for other types of security awareness training? The social engineering.
Yeah, ClickArmor is really a SaaS or a cloud-based gamified learning platform, and we use visual, dynamic, and animated content to educate employees on specific concepts that are really defensive in nature, different than what other kinds of training might deliver. And it also allows them to exercise those skills in a fun way with different challenges and things that allow them to gain points and achievements and show up on the leaderboard. But in addition, we can create content for any kind of program. For example, if you have a boring content, for your data categorization program or for your privacy program, we could take that content, create some learning objectives, and put the gamified content around it, create some learning challenges, create some exercises and simulations, and then get the data from the user activity that tells us whether people have really learned or become more proficient at it. But we can move it even beyond security to areas like privacy, like values and ethics, which might actually be timely these days when you think about all of the things that are happening in government and large organizations. We may have a need for educating people in those areas. But even things like health and safety, right? These are all areas that employees kind of do with half-heartedly. They don't think that it's important. They don't think that they're ever going to be targeted or need this stuff. But if you can gamify it, you can really align the personal interests and objectives with those of the organization, which really makes it much more effective. So beyond social engineering and phishing, we see an expansion of gamified learning to all aspects of awareness.
I've seen it used in areas such as security guards and folks that you wouldn't thought would be dealing with unusual, IT threats.
The platform that we've built for ClickArmor really has a lot of flexibility. So you can substitute in different content, obviously, as far as text or learning objectives and scenarios, but you can actually put in, different kinds of graphics to create a real simulated environment. Maybe in a prison environment, you would want to see scenarios where there's a cell block or some prison yard and the different kinds of people and roles that are involved there. We can easily bring those things to life. So if we want to target a particular type of training to different roles, we can change the terminology really quickly or change the scenarios really quickly.
I would encourage people to reach out to TRM Technologies, and we can certainly bring Scott to the table to discuss how we can help you with social engineering and security awareness training. Thank you very much, Scott. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Norm. I appreciated being here.